everyone, and welcome to the Greater Essex County District School Board public session of April 2nd, 2024. This evening, we have regrets from student trustee Mohammed, and we're anticipating trustee Cheen. Otherwise, today we have all trustees present, including trustee Hatfield, who will be joining us by phone. Can I have a mover for approval of the agenda? Trustee Leclerc and a seconder, trustee Sipkar. All in support? And that passes. Motion to convene into private session. First by trustee Leclerc, seconded by trustee McKinley. All in support? Thank you very much. We'll now move into our private session. Our special board meeting will begin at 6 p.m. and the remainder of our agenda will reconvene at 7 p.m. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special meeting of the board. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance, we have regrets from student trustee Mohammed. Otherwise, all other trustees are present. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, moving on. One moment. Oh, yes, and we have trustee Hatfield joining us by the phone. We also have parliamentarian Lori Luckanuk joining us as well to help us through this meeting. And now we'll move forward. There's no declarations of conflict of interest. And so there's a notice of motion that reads as follows to amend.
I rise to a question of privilege. So I have a statement I would like to make, uninterrupted before the motion. Before the recommendation, sorry.
So please state your privilege.
That as a elected member, I'm allowed to make a statement before the motion. Before the recommendation, I'm sorry, before the recommendation, I would like to make a statement.
Okay, let's go to our parliamentarian, Lori.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay, so a question of privilege is something of personal privilege or a privilege of the board. And basically, if it's a personal, it's too hot, it's too cold, I can't hear the speaker, I don't have the information before me, that type of thing. So basically, you're not allowed to make a statement in that we only have the one agenda item, but if there is something procedurally wrong or they can't understand what the process is here, something to that effect, then they can ask that question. So they just ask them to state their privilege, but no, they can't make a statement on the item.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. So there's no
I challenge that.
There's no challenge. We're going to proceed with the meeting. Yep. So there's a notice of motion that reads as follows. Recommendation to amend the previously adopted motion, agenda item L2, as of February 20th, 2024, that the GEC DSB name the new school on Jasper Road in Kingsville, Erie Migration Academy by striking academy and inserting district school. Do we have a mover? Trustee Burgess. And seconded by trustee McKinley.
I have a question. I know you guys want to really move through this really quick, and I can tell, but I do have a question. I'd like to know, one, where did the recommendation come from? Whose recommendation is this?
A point of order. There's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. I think I have the right to
Madam
speak
Chair?
first to it.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Lori.
If I may, yes, if the member has a question, they say request for information, and that's all they can do. If somebody has a point of order or a personal privilege, they can say point of order, and then they are to be quiet until you acknowledge them, and then they can raise their points of order. So to the member who has a question, if they have a request for information, they are allowed to ask that question at this point. And I believe the question was, where did this motion come from? And it's been moved and seconded. So the mover, I think the question has been answered in that the mover is the maker of the motion and is now about to speak to their motion.
So the recommendation was moved by Trustee Burgess and seconded by Trustee McKinley.
I hear what you're saying, Chair. That's not my question
to know who
is,
brought it.
who brought the recommendation in? Was that Trustee Burgess? Was that Trustee Hatfield? Was that yourself? Who was it?
Point of order, ma'am.
Usually when it's a
I
motion,
have I've moved something. It's been seconded. There's not a question for clarification here. If I could speak to it, I could. I think
well, it
that's
is
in
a
order.
question of clarification, Trustee Burgess. I'd like to know who
Please
brought
speak
the
through the chair,
recommendation
Madam
in.
Chair.
Through the chair, I would like to know who brought the recommendation in. And I have a right to know. We have a right to know.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Lori? Thank you.
the one member is not in order. I think the question has been answered. You have a maker of the motion, and that's who is about to speak to it. So, Madam Chair, I would advise you move on.
So what I'm hearing is, just to clarify, Trustee Burgess brought this in then.
We're going to move over to Trustee Julius Bird.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the chair. At the call of the chair, this special board meeting was called, and this was called by the chair, and we see it before ourselves all at the same time. I moved the motion with confidence. I moved to amend the previously adopted motion because we're at a place we haven't been before, Madam Chair, so through you. We have had this previous name vetted and unfortunately missed a vulgar acronym. It's had a lot of discussion in the public sphere, and we don't want our students, staff, or community to be involved in the bullying that's associated with a vulgar acronym. I do know that the acronym now has 4 letters, and I think that it has been vetted successfully, and there's some discussion that it hasn't been. It has been, and it passes all the tests. So I think this is a lesson learned, and it will be something that we will bring forward to the policy committee too, in naming and renaming. So I have confidence in this. I look for support, and I would like to immediately call the question, ma'am, and through you, Madam Chair, that calling the question, ending debate would be in order and not debatable. So I would call the question, please.
Do we have a seconder?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Lori?
Yes. So what I'm hearing is the member wishes to call the question, which means, and you're correct, I heard you moving on to get a seconder. It requires a second, and because the motion is taking away the right to debate, it will require a 2/3 vote. So take the vote very carefully. It is not debatable. So get your second, and then ask for for and against, making sure you are sure of the vote. And it, again, 2/3 is required.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Yeah. Trustee McKinley?
Point of order.
Vote.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
Trustee Burgess, what Trustee Burgess said was not correct.
There's no point of order. We're beyond that now. And so we're calling the vote, calling the question. So all those in favor,
Could I interrupt? I need
for the
clarification because I
striking?
could not hear very well the speaker. I don't know what she just said because it was quite muffled for my poor hearing. Could you please?
So she's saying that now that we have a seconder, we're calling for the vote to strike academy and insert district school. So everybody's going to be called to raise their hand.
No.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Lori.
We're not calling, you're not calling for the vote on the question. You're actually moving to find out if people are willing to call or to end debate and vote immediately. So this is a motion of itself. Call the previous question or call the question, and now you're deciding on whether you are going to call the question immediately. So this motion requires a 2/3. If you get a 2/3, then you will end debate and vote on the motion immediately. If you do not get 2/3, then the debate continues.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the question. Do we have 2/3 to call the question? All in support? It's 1, 2,
Support.
3, 4. That's 7. That passes.
Madam Chair, make sure to ask for the negative.
Any opposed? 2, 4. Okay, right. That passes. Now I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of striking academy and inserting district school, raise your hand, please.
Support.
1, 2. Sorry, keep your hands up, please. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I support. All opposed to striking academy and inserting district school, raise your hand.
What happened here tonight is terrible, absolutely terrible.
May I speak?
That passes.
May I speak?
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Wow.
Point of,
Seconded.
point of order.
There is no point of order.
This meeting's adjourned.
I'm done.
All in support? Sorry. The meeting is adjourned. I'm going to take a first, a second, and then all in support. So first, okay. Trustee Burgess, seconded. Trustee McKinley, all in support. Meeting is adjourned at 6:10.
This World Autism Day. Just wanted to highlight that since it is actually today. Yes. Oh, sorry. We're going into habit. We're going into public first. Sorry.
Not a problem. Welcome back, everybody, to our public session. Currently, we have regrets from student trustee Mohammed and trustee Cook and trustee Armstrong are not present. By phone, joining us is trustee Hatfield. And so, yes, this part of the meeting, according to the Education Act, this first part of the meeting will be for education development charges. And so to begin, Section E, are there any declarations of conflict of interest around the education development charges? Seeing none. Before we move to Section F, we want to let everybody know that we do have guests from Watson and Associates on the phone to help guide us through the EDC process. Mr. Amendola and Mr. Techman are joining us. So now moving on to the Section F, which is on pages 1 to 14, the proposed education development charge by law renewal, which the recommendation reads that the board confirms that an additional statutory public meeting is not required prior to the enactment of the education development charge bylaw for the County of Essex, Township of Peely, in accordance with Section 257.63, subsection 3 of the Education Act, and that the board enact an
Participants are
education.
waiting in the lobby. To admit all participants in the lobby, press *2 1.
And that the board enact an education development charge bylaw for the County of Essex, Township of Peely, as attached in Appendix 4 of the memorandum. Could I have a mover? Trustee Leclerc, seconded by Trustee Burgess. And now we'll have discussion or questions for our guests. Trustee Sipkar.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I just have one quick question for Mr. Amendolia. So it was at our last meeting, it was discussed, and I don't believe Mr. Amendolia said this. I believe it was our legal counsel stated that EDCs are not collected on additional dwelling units. I recently heard through other professional activities that EDCs are actually collected on additional dwelling units. For example, in Toronto, I heard that someone confirmed this, that they pay EDCs when they build a new unit. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that. I just wanted some clarification based on the comments that were made at the last meeting.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Jack talking, and I know Brad can add to this too because he deals specifically with the bylaw. I think maybe so there's a little bit of clarification. When Mr. Teichman spoke about the additional dwelling unit being exempt, it's regarding a specific part of the legislation with regard to intensification. So if you have a single-family home and you built a duplex or a triplex, those units would be exempt from paying EDCs. But perhaps what the trustee is speaking about in Toronto, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so please clarify me if not. But if we're talking about additional dwelling units like a laneway house or an additional dwelling unit that you build on the property, then the trustee is correct. Those would be subject to an EDC, assuming they are a dwelling as defined by Mr. Teichman. So perhaps, trustee, if you want to clarify if those are the additional dwelling units you're speaking about, and then maybe Mr. Teichman can give you his perspective.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, I was speaking about the detached, although I was wondering about the attached or internal ones as well. But it sounds like unless it's like a physical detached unit, those are the ones that are not exempt, that they would collect EDCs on. Correct?
Correct. If it's a detached new unit, then it would be an EDC. If it's an intensification of a single family unit, like I said, the typical example is a duplex, turning a single family into a duplex, those would be exempt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Any other questions? Trustee Burgess?
My question is about next steps or what has happened already. Have municipalities all been informed, and have we had any feedback at all? Or does that happen after this? I can't remember. In the public consultation process, did we have any kind of feedback?
Hi, this is Mr. Amendolia again, through you, the chair. Yeah, we had stakeholder meetings that municipalities as well as developers through the jurisdiction were invited to. So we gave options for feedback there. We let them know, email addresses and contacts if there was additional feedback that anyone wanted to provide. I can tell the trustees to date that no additional feedback has been provided. And the immediate next step then would be if the board passes the bylaw this evening, then the bylaw comes into force. I believe it's 5 days after tonight. And in the interim, we provide notification to the municipalities. We've already let them know when the board was considering bylaw passage. If it gets passed, we would provide notification to them, and then they would start collecting with the new rate.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Amendolia and Mr. Teichman. I'm now going to call for the vote. All in support of the recommendation? Any opposed? That passes. Thank you very much. Now we're going to motion, could I have a motion to move into education first? Trustee McKinley, his second, Mr. Leclerc, Trustee Leclerc, and that all in support? And now we move on into our education piece. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Jack Amendolia.
Is now exiting.
Brad Teichman.
Is now exiting.
Just wait till they leave. Okay. I'll call the Education Committee meeting to order. The attendance is the same as was posted just a few minutes ago with the public portion. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenni, Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi, and Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Okay. And attendance was already covered. Approval of the agenda. Do I have someone to move the approval of the agenda? Trustee Nelson, second by Trustee Leclerc. All in support of the agenda? Okay, thank you. That passes. Declaration of conflict of interest. Is there anyone with a conflict of interest? Seeing none. Approval of the minutes. Do I have someone to move the approval of the minutes? Sarah, or Trustee Sipkar, sorry, and Trustee Leclerc. All in support? Any opposed? That passes. Thank you. Was there any minutes or business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we have some presentations. Our first is Celebrating Black Joy, Black Excellence Student Symposium. I believe Superintendent Dr. Howitt is going to do that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and to present to you about the most recent Celebrating Black Joy, Black Excellence Student Symposium that was held on March 21st, which was the International Day of Elimination of Racial Discrimination at the Chicharo Club. Just to give you an idea of why this symposium came to be, we asked the Black Student Advisory Committee, I think it was the end of November, very beginning of December, in one of their meetings, how would you like to see the board celebrate Black History Month? And their response was, we want something just for us, something where we can celebrate Black joy and Black excellence. So I'm really proud to say that we responded. We went back in January and quickly got together and started to organize the event. When we presented to them that the event was going to happen, they were in this room and they were just elated. And we apologized in advance that we didn't, because of the short time frame, weren't able to work directly with them because we needed to make it come together. But our promise was to get feedback and to plan forward with their voices. So you'll see here on the screen that it was student-led that day. We had members of the Black Student Advisory Committee, Ladanya and Laughter, who led the day in a very, very professional way throughout the entire day. We started the day with the GC DSB land acknowledgement and the Afrocentric land acknowledgement. And then we were so pleased to welcome one of the keynote speakers, Kiana Porter, who's a local artist, who sang the Black National Anthem a cappella, and she was absolutely outstanding. Then we were so lucky that Black Kids in Action could come and engage the students through dance. And so I'm going to show you this little video. It's about 2 minutes and 40 seconds. I hope you enjoy it. It gives you a flavor of what the day was like. Hope this works.
Ilondoloze,
So just wanted to give you a flavor of the dance. That first session was followed by younger dancers who joined the older dancers on stage, and they were absolutely incredible and didn't miss a beat. We were then very fortunate to welcome Arts Can Teach spoken word artist Mbonisi to the stage. He provided a spoken word presentation to the students. He presented a poem about his grandmother, about his son, about a poem that he wrote for his friend's daughter, and he elevated the students on the power of word. He was outstanding. We were very fortunate to welcome 5 different keynote speakers, Mr. Mike Akpada, who is a former police officer for Windsor Police Services, also a former active member fighting in Afghanistan, presently the deputy mayor of the town of LaSalle, and community activist Kiana Porter, a community activist and local artist, Bobby Day, a former student from our board and leader in the technical world. And as a woman in that field, it was really profound for the students to engage with Bobby. And Mr. McBride, Brandon McBride, a former Olympian and a founder of the McBride Association or group within our community, and our very own Chantel Browning Morgan, who couldn't at the last minute join us, but still in Chantel's perfect fashion contributed in some way to the success of the day. The students absolutely loved them. So in the feedback from the students, they acknowledged the amazing presenters and the powerful impact of their messages. Mr. Akpada brought people on the verge of tears. He spoke about moving past being the very first in the Black community, the very first. And he spoke about Alton Parker, who was the first Black police officer, I believe it was in 1943, and they've named a park after him. And his words inspired the students to achieve their dreams. Another big success for the day, a couple of them, we had social media in real time with images and comments from the students throughout the day and visible to students throughout the day. We had music playing upon entry and at different intervals throughout the day and lunch. We had a student photo booth that was very popular throughout the lunch period. And we also had a 360, you'll see it there in the far picture. About 4 students could stand on it, and an iPhone went around them at 360, engaged them and dance and speak, and they just really loved that particular session. And we also had 20 different kiosks that joined us. So just to mention about the kiosks, they were outstanding. They brought joy, generosity, and graciousness into the room while mobilizing knowledge about services for youth, and in particular Black youth in our community. We made out passports for the students, so they went and got them signed at each of the different kiosks. And then they were able to put that in for a draw, which was a big hit with the kids. Some of the kiosks were not specifically towards Black youth, but supported our dismantling anti-Black racism strategy, and particularly the University of Windsor, St. Clair College, ETFO, and OSSTF. So we're really glad to have them in the room. And the kids absolutely love them. So you can see all of the members of the community that were involved. And they were very, very generous with all the giveaways for the kids that filled up their conference bags. Also want to give a big shout out to Mr. Stefan Adjeti, Vice Principal of Kennedy. I'm telling you, he has another job if he wants it as a talk show host, because he totally engaged the panel of 2 alumni, Haley Chase, alumni from Walkerville, and Brandon Noyadu from Riverside, and 2 present students, Welwell Simon from Kennedy and Janisa Talbot from Herman Freedom Academy. He engaged them in conversation, but then he engaged everybody in the crowd, which was wonderful. And the students that spoke on the panel were inspirational and empowering for the students attending within the group. That students mostly from 7 to 12, with some grade 6 and 5 students as well. Some other highlights of the day: we acknowledged Ramadan, and at the commencement of the day, we provided packed up food for individuals that were celebrating Ramadan and a separate space for them during the lunch. We offered prayer mats and a prayer space. The passports, like I said, were a big hit and led to door prizes for books from Bibla, which is a bookstore, and we provided recommended books from Black authors for them to consider. The lunch, they were pre-ordered. People placed their t-shirt order in order for their sessions. They had voice and choice to which sessions that they went to, and they also had a voice around their lunch. So we had vegetarian, halal, and other dietary restrictions that were honored. And then to honor Chantel, she developed cahoots that were very popular with the kids. In fact, they said they wish they had more time for the cahoots. So they were engaged in good camaraderie that way. Wanted to give a shout out to contributors to the success of the day as well, in particular St. Clair College, Turner Consulting, and the Chicharo Club, as well as internally to the organization. Media Services did an outstanding job, and the incredible support and contributions from Student Success and Wellbeing and the Equity Group. I want to acknowledge the team of the Create Your Future advisors, as well as the Black Graduation Coach. When the students said that they wanted something just for them, it was us that got together and planned it, and they were incredibly tenacious and creative and engaged to make this possibility happen for the kids. But more importantly, I just want to highlight to the people in this room, whenever their name was said that day, or a reference to the Create Your Future team or to Natalie, the graduation coach, there was a round of applause in the space. And I think that speaks to the importance of the relationship that this good team of people do in service, creating these trusting relationships in support of success for the students. We also had QR codes to engage in social media, but we also did a QR code for an exit survey. So here's what the students had to say. We asked for questions. We said, what did you enjoy most? So, obvious answers, the food, the dance, the games, being surrounded by like-minded people that looked like me. And when I went to the qualitative feedback, here is what student wrote. I enjoyed the different perspectives on Black and biracial speakers. Furthermore, finding inspiration from successful people who look like us. In most education and childcare systems, you don't have many or if any Black educators to teach about what it means to be Black in a predominantly white institution and community. Knowing that being Black is beautiful and that we can find joy in togetherness and connectedness is important. It shows you how poignant the students are. And remember, these are students from grade 7 to grade 12. Under what is something that you would like to see in the future conferences, cultural food, consider it before or after Ramadan, a very good point, more hands-on activities, STEM activities. And here's what one student wrote in the qualitative. More candy on the tables, and by the way, French fries are always good to have with pizza. It was very cute. And then to the question, what do you do? What do you do to stay connected to your identity? You can see engaging in food, engaging with people, learning about the culture, the power of art in supporting cultural identity, connections to family, not being afraid to tell people where I come from, and to teach others about my culture. And I love the comment, I rock my natural hair. And I looked at one of the qualitative comments that I included here. What do you do to keep to your identity? Everything that I set for myself in my life, my goals, and my ambitions. I stay true to those things because that is what makes me who I am. Also, to excel and hard work at those things makes me a proud Black person because I'm not letting the color of my skin hold myself back from everything I want in my life. So very, very powerful. And the last question is, what can the Greater Essex do to better support a sense of belonging for students that identify as Black, African, or Caribbean? So quite a number of students said hold events like this each year, hire Black staff, people in authority within our board, support field trips that are relative to Black students, more supports for Black students, educate others about the Black culture. And here's what one student wrote. Keep doing events like this. I think this event made lots of Black students realize that they are seen and loved. It was really a fun day, and I hope to attend more in the future. So I really appreciated the words from the students, and we shared all of that with our Black Student Advisory Committee. But before I go to that, I just want to share a letter that was hand-delivered to me by an elementary student in our system. And it starts off, "Dear members and staff of the Chicharo Club," which I thought was really cute. And then they said, "On behalf of the Prince Edward Public School, I would love to give you guys some feedback on how much I appreciated and enjoyed my experience. When I first walked into the main room, I was in shock. Not shocked because of how beautiful it looked, which it really did look amazing, but because how many people were there to support the students and the Black community to help bring each other together and to lift each other up. I really appreciated all the assistants and speakers who had the courage and confidence to speak about their experiences of being who they are today and how that everyone is not going to believe in you just because of your race. Finally, which I know everyone loved, was going to the different kiosks, learning new things and getting free stuff like wristbands, hair products, yo-yos, pens, and more. But just in general, it was a really amazing experience, and I hope that we can have more experiences like that. And then we shared this information with the Black Student Advisory Committee. Last week, we took them to the Charles Wright Museum in the U.S., which is just next to the Detroit Institute of Art. If you haven't been, it's an outstanding museum. And here's what the students had to say after they analyzed the information from other students, and then they too have experience. They said, our students, our Black Student Advisory Committee, are unanimous in the fact that they loved the layout of the symposium, that it was student-led and focused and driven. They loved the sense of community, the photo booth, the 360 camera, music, dance, spoken word, student MCs, student panel, and they were happy with the space and the food. They did not see much need for change, but many of the students of the Black Student Advisory Committee offered to put their names forward to help organize, MC, sit on the panel, and help out in any way next year. And here are some of the suggestions they have put forward to improve. They said they want to be involved in volunteering of the day and planning the meetings, and they wanted to have special shirts as the Black Student Advisory Committee. I think that's cool. And they also wanted to help lead, I loved this, elementary students. They see them as their little siblings and they want to mentor them. They wanted more hands-on activities embedded in breakout sessions and in the main room, and they loved Kahoot and wanted more time for it. Age-specific activities and breakout sessions for elementary students, student interactions, icebreakers, mixers so that they can mingle with each other, incorporate culturally relevant food and vendors, incorporate student-created playlists of the music, and breakout sessions to focus on STEM and focus social workers, medical doctors, lawyers, engineers, create a map so the participants know where to go in the place, better transitions. We had a couple of backlogs and spots, so they were suggesting counterclockwise for organization, more raffles throughout the symposium and the breakout rooms, and they would like an interactive station showing different hairstyles. And they suggested that we veer away from the Ramadan season. So that was the symposium in a nutshell and the feedback that we got, and we're super excited to work with students in planning right away for next year's experience. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Are there any questions? Trustee Burgess and Trustee Captain.
That was great. I've already shared with you that I heard feedback from the day was just outstanding. Everybody was just raving about how great it was. I wasn't going to ask a question because I thought you did, but you just prompted something. Ages ago, when we were building, making the design, the space template, et cetera, and building North Star, I asked at the time, because there was some interesting curriculum pieces, particularly from the States. It was coming from the States, but on the hairdressing, I can't remember the name of the course, please help me, at North Star. Cosmetology, but is it cosmetology? Hairstyling and aesthetics. Thank you very much. And I specifically asked whether we were going to have in the curriculum use of black hair models and resources. And I wondered, I haven't followed up on any of that. I remember having the tour, but do we have that? Because I think that's something that, particularly in the town of Amherstburg, we have clientele, we have, folks there. I think that's something that we should be integrating. Do we do that?
I'm not sure what happens right now in the program, but we can find that out, and we can certainly look for opportunities to create in that way.
That might be something that students also can bring to this forum where they can, demonstrate that they're also learning.
Thank you.
Trustee Chin, I believe you had your hand up for a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the report. It's very impressive. And my question is that I see the feedback from the students that they have any expectation from our board. And I remember I think last year or the year before, we have a discussion regarding the police, the police on campus and the cooperative. I remember the black students had some concerns regarding that, and we have an ad hoc committee. So I wonder what's the situation now, and is there any black student mentioned about their feeling about police on campus? Thank you.
So not during the symposium. We did have a former police officer speak in terms of pathways, but there was no concern mentioned at that time. That is part of our dismantling anti-Black racism strategy, and there is committee work in play right now. But the report hasn't, the final report hasn't been finalized. Am I correct in saying that? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Seeing no more. Thank you very much. Oh, Student Trustee Pine?
Just a comment. I just wanted to say thank you for that presentation. It was really great. I have a couple senators who are on the committee, and they really enjoyed the event that was put on, and it was great to see them talk about their leadership that they got to show.
Thank you for sharing.
Great. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Next up is another excellent presentation by Superintendent Roberts, Environmental Stewardship in Schools.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to introduce to you a teacher consultant for science and outdoor education, Donna Simonovic, and she is joined by two environmental stewards. I'll invite them up as well, Craig Weglers and Ryan Essery. And I'm confident that they will, you will hear and feel their enthusiasm throughout the presentation for environmental stewardship throughout our schools. I can't possibly have this enthusiasm that they have, so I will hand it over to them. Thank you.
Thank you to Superintendent Roberts for that introduction, and thank you, Madam Chair, and everyone for having us. We are the environmental stewardship team, and I apologize in advance if I get loud and talk really fast, but like Raquel said, we're really excited about it. We're proud of our program, and we have a fantastic job. So Ryan and I go out to schools each day, kindergarten all the way through high school, and we do environmental stewardship with our students. So it's not up there, but our mission, which should be coming up shortly, I can just tell you about our mission. Our mission is to get students involved in environmental stewardship. And our lessons, K to 12, are high energy, engaging, really messy, and really fun. And years ago when Donna and I talked about this program, one of the things that we mentioned is in order to get students to act on behalf of the environment, they have to connect to it. And that's what our program is all about. If we can come in and have fun and get kids to realize how amazing and how interesting and how beautiful our natural world is, now they're more apt to take action to protect our natural world, right? So a lot of the things that we offer from kindergarten to grade 12, let's see here. That's okay. I can go on and on about this. There we go, right? And there's our mission and our goal. But like I was saying, it started with Donna just simply saying we need to engage kids in our natural world. So all of our programs out there are curriculum related. They're all engaging. They all come with extension activities as well that are cross-curricular. And a lot of times we say we're kind of like grandparents. We come into classes, we make a big mess because it's not our classroom, and we have lots of fun. And we leave staff and students with lots of engaging extension activities that they can continue the learning after we leave.
Okay, and the Environmental Stewardship Plan this year focuses on two family of schools, Riverside and North Star, and Craig and Ryan visit these core schools 4 days per week, and the rest of the system 1 day per week for environmental stewardship activities. And the Environmental Stewardship Plan always starts with a waste audit at these core schools. And the waste audit is arranged by facility services and usually conducted in the gym, which allows all the classes to come through the gym and see how much waste one school makes in 1 day. And the environmental stewardship team is at every waste audit to explain to staff and students why it's important and how we can benefit from the waste audit. And then after every waste audit, Ryan and Craig return to the core schools to do a waste reduction assembly. And at the waste reduction assembly, they talk about our effects of using single-use plastic, food waste, and energy use on our planet. And then they discuss ways that we can reduce our ecological footprint as individuals in our classrooms, in our schools, and our board. And then after each presentation, they do send out curriculum-based activities on waste reduction. Then, after the assemblies, they go back to the core schools and visit every single class for a wildlife presentation. The presentations are only about 10 minutes long, and they talk about the importance of wildlife and all the common wildlife that we see here in Windsor, Essex County, not just in Ojibwe Park and natural areas, but the wildlife also in urban areas like downtown Windsor. And then following the presentation, they have a whole bunch of hands-on activities for the students. Then after the wildlife days, they go back, well, Ryan and Craig now split up, and then go back to every single class in those schools. I think there's 8 schools that they're visiting. So they visit every single school for an individualized, more specific workshop. And then if requested, we do go to parent councils to talk about environmental stewardship. And we also do recycling certifications for eco clubs and lunch monitors.
So one of the goals is about waste management and waste minimization. So during the waste audits, we actually were able to see 134 classes come through the gymnasium and actually see firsthand and in person what is collected in their school in a given day. So the presentation during the waste audits is just a quick brief kind of what is a waste audit, because a lot of the staff and students have never, been part of this. So it's really visual, really hands-on. Students are able to engage in different activities too as well. So we do different activities, more specifically a sorting activity where we teach students, about what goes into the recycling bin, so that what goes in the red bin, what goes in the blue bin. We have all sorts of hands-on activities, and the students will actually participate in small groups and physically sort the items. We also do an activity called Better or Worse, where we just take everyday common items, simple things like, for instance, a Ziploc bag versus a Tupperware container that could be cleaned out and used again and again, and which option is better for the environment, which one is worse. And we also do an activity which is very educational and eye-opening for students, where we talk about how long till it's gone. So this is where students can actually look at a common item, usually often a single-use plastic item, and either guess or try to find out how long until that item is gone. Those waste audits are amazing, where the students can actually see in real time and in real life the amount of garbage that's collected in one day. We follow up the waste audits with a waste assembly, where we actually focus on our goals of waste minimization as well as energy conservation. We get to dive in a little bit deeper. We were able to do 34 different assemblies with 8 of our different schools, and developmentally appropriate. For the younger kids, we only keep them about a half hour. For the intermediate, senior level kids, we keep them for about an hour and really dive deep into some of these topics. Following the assemblies, we do a survey just to see the impact. And actually, we got some great feedback. As you can see from the different charts that we have here, when asked how effective were the presentations in enhancing student awareness on the environment impacts of waste, 94% of respondents said it was either effective or very effective. When asked how effective were the presentations in encouraging students and staff to further discuss waste minimization, 83 of the respondents said, again, either effective or very effective, which is great to see that feedback. And probably one of the most important ones in this last one here is, did it make any change? And did we see any type of encouraged waste reduction or improved habits? And we were really happy to see 72% said yes, 22% said maybe, but we're hoping that means that 94% is going to either, hopefully with that maybe, we could get them over time making the right choices as far as thinking more about our waste minimization and how we can actually take action.
After our waste audits, and then our assemblies, and then our wildlife visits, now we go and visit individual classes for lessons that run between 50 and 100 minutes. They all incorporate a presentation followed by a STEAM activity as well, and there's the ones that we offer for early years and primary. We're always trying to add new programs that are curriculum related with cross-curricular extension activities. We build beaver lodges with primaries. My neighbors are always wondering why I'm collecting sticks all over the neighborhood and giving me odd looks. Well, it's to build beaver lodges and beaver dams. We We do insect hotels where we learn about the importance of insects, and then we go out with students and create insect hotels with a little template, with a little kind of birdhouse that we fill with natural materials, and getting out on school playgrounds and having kids, pick up acorns and pick up twigs. I was at a school a few weeks ago and a student came up to me, was so excited, said, Mr. Craig, can I add this to the insect hotel? It would be perfect. And he passed me some flattened dog poop. And I said, well, that one might not be great for an insect hotel, but was so proud to show me that. And then I'm holding that, in my hand. This is what we get to do every day. We do some seed ball planting as well with Junior. We kind of step it up with beaver dams and habitat. We added an Ozobot activity this year where the little programmable Ozobots can run through a course and do certain actions based on whether the item goes in the blue bin or the red bin. We also have the Ozobots go through a maze where they'll choose the renewable resource over the non-renewable. And for each division, we also offer waste reduction as well, where some staff and teachers would like us to come back for their specific class, go over the importance of recycling, waste minimization, energy conservation, and do those sorting activities as well. We offer owl vomit dissections, which is a big hit. Water filters I have tomorrow as well. Invasive species. Ryan and I always joke if we ever got pulled over on the way to work when we have a stuffed owl and fake animal scat and furs and antlers, and we'd have a lot of explaining to do that we are in fact environmental stewardship teachers. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, where those are pictures from our day-to-day program. We have some students there in the top left that are building beaver lodges. That's Donna's favorite, the cicada shells, the molts right there. When she does presentations, she actually puts the little cicada bug shells on her shirt when she's presenting. It gets a lot of strange looks. We have students as well with coyote pelts. There's some vermicompost worms we work on with microscopes and magnifying glasses. And we're always very clear with students of all ages that no animals were hurt for our program. We meet like-minded people wherever we go, and the furs were all donated to our program. Many of the animal furs used to be items of clothing, and we talk about how we need to move past that for hurting animals just to simply wear it as an item of clothing. And we also say a lot of the items, the snakeskins, the skulls, the antlers, were all found on Fighting Island, which we're hoping to be back there this spring, which is a huge part of our environmental stewardship program.
Okay, and then for our junior workshops, we talk about a beaver's life and their characteristics. The students get very excited when they learn about beaver having 2 sets of eyelids, one see-through, it's like goggles underwater, helps them swim. They have little valves in their nose and ears to prevent water to come in. So they learn about a beaver, and then they get to create a beaver dam using only natural materials, so sticks and stones and mud, and then they get to test their beaver dam to see if any water goes through or not. And then we have our energy conservation workshops where students can make electric circuits or do coding like Craig mentioned. And then for our intermediate workshops, we discuss owls. So we talk about owls in Windsor-Essex County. And then my favorite, students get to look at real life owl puke. So they dissect the owl puke, which is called owl pellets, and they look for all the bones and skulls, and you can see that picture right there with those beautiful manicured nails. Those students just loved that lab. At first, they didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't want to touch it, and then they stayed all through lunch to pick through the puke. And then once they find all the bones, like the leg bones and the hip bones, they look at a bone chart, and then they can create a skeleton. So that skeleton right in those pictures was created by students, and it's a skeleton of a rodent, probably a mouse or a rat. And then we also have biodiversity workshops, water conservation workshops where students create water filters. And another one of my favorites is talking about unicellular and multicellular organisms in pond water. So students learn about all the cool little monsters in pond water, and they get to take a look at them under the microscope. And right there I have an example of one of the macroinvertebrates that are students' favorite. And it's only about 2 millimeters big, but when you look at it under the microscope, you can see that its body is see-through, and you can actually see its heart beating, and they can count how many beats per minute their heart is pumping, or the Daphne's heart is pumping. And then for senior students, we also have workshops that go into more detail on biodiversity, water and energy conservation, pond water ecosystems, and invasive species in Windsor, Essex County.
So actually, here are some of the numbers from this year so far. So in addition to all of the waste audits and the waste minimization assemblies, we were actually able to go out and do 141 classes for the wildlife visits. We were able to do 184 and counting individualized in-class lessons and lab activities with different classroom teachers with their different grade levels. We were able to go to 22 steps or gains classes so far this year, with a few more on our list that we hope to visit to as well. We actually were able to, I wasn't able to attend, but Craig and Donna were able to go to the Student Senate and participate as well, and just engage in those same goal conversations around waste minimization, energy conservation. We're able to participate with the Specialist High Skills major as well, and I did 2 invasive species certifications at Point Pelee National Park. It was a great day with the SISM program there, and actually even was able to participate at Maryville this year in a science fair. And so still other school visits that we have planned throughout this year. In addition, after the school in-class visits, the teachers actually get curriculum-based extension activities that they could do with their class if they want to continue their learning on a given topic. But most importantly, we get this feedback. And this is feedback directly from the teachers themselves. And when I actually read through this, it does make me really happy to hear. But when asked how effective was the presentation on encouraging students to ask questions and or engage in exploration, 100% said either extremely effective or very effective. When asked, thinking about environmental stewardship, how effective was this workshop in enhancing your students' awareness of the topic? And again, 100% of the respondents either said extremely effective or very effective. So very happy to hear all this, and we're even able to get some of the anecdotal information too as well.
All the way throughout our program, we have surveys and we're looking for feedback on ways to improve. And we've been very fortunate wherever we go to meet students and staff that are dedicated, that care, that understand the issues, that have the power of technology that I don't have, and they're doing great things out in our system. My views of impact have really changed over the years. I used to think impact was, well, we had 280 requests this year, and I now know that impact, we have to dig deeper. And what we're seeing out there is, yes, lots of requests, especially coming back to gains and steps and maps classes, but also we've seen student work on bulletin boards. We have more of a presence on X, formerly Twitter. Rachel's Golden Bin Challenge has been really, really popular as well. And then the data is showing, thanks to Rachel Bondi, who's a huge part of our team, that our audit results show a 14% improvement this year compared to last year's waste audits. And when we go into not just our core schools, but other schools we visit, we see signs of this. That's the Golden Recycle Bin Wall of Fame, where a lot of the schools that got the Golden Recycle Bin have that challenge of who gets to win it for that week. And moving forward is our what we call the 5 stewardship non-negotiables. That's what we would like to move towards. And those are the 5 things we're really trying to improve, not just in our core schools, but throughout the system, is saying no to all single-use water bottles. We still see them in schools, especially for athletic events and meet the teacher night, where all of our schools have water bottle refilling stations, and there's really no need to have those. Each one of those water bottles, scientists believe, could last 450 years in our natural environment before they start breaking down. It could be far longer than that. Our second one is no more styrofoam. That's my nemesis. Styrofoam peanuts, styrofoam cuts, styrofoam packaging. It could be as much as 10,000 years before that. So the idea that we've created something we use for minutes and will be on our planet for tens of thousands of years or more. Goose bins, I think, is a great idea. We're seeing that a little bit more often. Goose meaning good on one side. In our waste audits, we noticed in the red bins that a lot of the paper was still good on one side and yet was put in the red bin. It's the right place for it, but it still has use. So if we can get goose bins in every class, it will really reduce the amount of paper waste, and students can use that second side for sketching, for art, for a variety of different reasons. Ziploc bags we see out there in snack programs, we see in student lunches. Any plastic bag will be 20 years or longer, where we really think, Tupperware is something that can be used for a long time and really reduces the amount of waste we create. And finally, plastic cutlery we still see out there. Experts believe plastic cutlery, knives, forks, and spoons could be up to to 1,000 years in our environment, where a metal spoon, a metal fork will last a long time. And with the older students, we really talk a lot about greenwashing as well. We talk about single-use wooden spoons or biodegradable cutlery. Certainly better option than single-use plastic, but it's still single-use. So when we see that wooden or biodegradable cutlery, it's still probably dipped in something that isn't good for us. It's still used once and then could end up in a landfill. So that's kind of our goals moving forward, is our 5 stewardship non-negotiables. Am I out of time, Donna? I think so. Okay. Should have talked fast.
Thank you.
So thank you again. I hope you felt their enthusiasm. I sure do every time I listen to them. And thank you again to the team. Do you have any questions?
Trustee Sipkar?
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. I saw on the previous slide that you're going to select 2 new schools next year. My question was actually going to be, how do you select the family of schools, and how do you rotate through the system?
So we're not there yet to determine what schools are next. I think we're going to look at the history of what schools have been, or what family of schools have had the benefits of a team. Environmental stewardship, so there's obviously some funding that comes with that as well. So once we know more, we will certainly share that information.
Trustee Burgess, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Madam Chair. A question through you, if I could. You mentioned getting back to Fighting Island, and how long have we been away? Do we still have BASF? Do we have partners? What does the next steps look like?
Through you, Madam Chair. So we are currently in a time where we're passing back and forth the documentation, the legalities, the liabilities. So we're just waiting for some feedback on that before we can proceed to visiting the island. We do still have the relationship with BASF, and the portable, I believe, was, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Howitt, was just, new one was just installed last spring. So thank you. And so we're looking forward with anticipation to have our students visiting there this spring. So
this spring is like
now.
spring now?
Yes, so we're just waiting for some sign-offs on the documentation paperwork. Unfortunately, that can take its time in ensuring that safety's first, and our students come first with respect to the safety.
Trustee Sipkar? Oh, and then, sorry, it was Student Trustee Pine first, and then Trustee Sipkar.
Yeah, just to give our eco stewardship team a happy update from Senate. Since you came and saw us, we actually have banned plastic water bottles from being at our Senate meetings. We don't have paper or styrofoam plates anymore. Instead, we have plates that get washed. And we also, for a holiday break gift to all of our senators, gave them reusable silverware, so that's not there anymore too. So thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So with another hat on, I used to help organize a community garden in downtown Windsor, which Mr. Essery was a part of. So I can tell that you've been doing this for a long time, and he would actually bring his students to help with the community garden over at Weigel Park, actually. And it kind of dawned on me, Mike, I had a curiosity around, is that ever thought of as being part of future curriculums or future activities? I know that the city now has a number of them. Wondering if you've thought about those partnerships, not just in the city of Windsor, but even into the county as well. You might not be able to answer it, but it's just maybe an idea.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, that has not come up on our planning moving forward, but certainly we can include that, and if that's something that could be measured as well, and our involvement in creating those partnerships, it's certainly something that we could consider moving forward.
As a quick supplemental, I know they always need help with a variety of tasks. So just as a thought, if you're thinking about it.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for that excellent presentation. I think I've seen 3 different versions of the environmentals, and every one of them has been slightly different and informed me more. So thank you very much for the energy and the wealth of information. It's really appreciated. Thank you. Okay, moving on. There were no delegations for tonight. No one on the speakers list for education. New business. No new business. Reports to be received. There is a report in our package. if you have any questions regarding that report. Any questions? Oh.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I I read through the report and I see that we have several software that we purchased. It's like digital math tools, and I wonder what's the effect of purchasing this, and what's the result? Because I see on page 9 that 50% of teachers in priority schools they logged into mythology more than twice since September, and 70% of teachers in non-priority schools logged more than twice since September. And for the priority schools, I think only 50% logged more than twice. I wonder if it is a satisfactory result, and why in the priority schools, those teachers who need this methodology help to teach the math subject, they don't use that efficiently. And do we evaluate those software and try to find out which one is more efficient and to save some of our budget? Am I clear? Sorry. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the digital tools came through a funding envelope, and so we had to purchase selected tools based on that funding. Does that answer that part of the question? And then part 2 of the question, why are they only inputting it logged in 2 times into Mathology?
Oh, yes. My question is that we purchased several tools, and seems it's not used very effectively. So do we, do any investigation on that and find out how to improve the utilization of those tools?
So we have the 5 elementary facilitators and 1 secondary facilitator supporting with the use of the interventions in the classroom, one being the digital tools as well. Mathology was also a new resource for grades 4 to 8, so I believe there's a learning MPD around that as well as they become more comfortable with the use of the digital tool. And then if you look collectively through all of these, for example, MathUp was quite popular amongst the classrooms as well. So they may not be using all of them equitably. So they may be finding comfort in one digital tool or what that classroom would prefer to use versus another digital tool. So over time, would it be our hope that they would be using at least one digital tool within the classroom that we would be providing for them as educators and the students.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for that report. Moving on to trustee question period. Are there any questions for admin for education committee at this time? Seeing none. Oh, trustee Burgess.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted a final kind of update since next Monday is the solar eclipse day, et cetera, and if any of our, weather predictions, any chances of, what staff is doing, is the dismissal still there, the buses are still running, blah, blah, all that stuff. Nothing's changed?
So through you, Madam Chair, buses are running in the morning only, not at the end of the day because they would be on the roads during the eclipse time. And early dismissal that was approved by the ministry is still at 1 o'clock.
I have a supplemental question and concern because it has been posted quite a few places because we are one of the areas in the southern part of Essex County where we get full totality, and it's a magnet for a lot of tourism and a lot of folks to attend. So the predictions for traffic are horrendous right now. Now, I don't know if people are exaggerating or what. There are certain areas that are going to be more crowded and more, snagged in traffic. Folks are already saying you want to get, give yourself hours to get there, parking and all of that. Have we anticipated the prioritization of getting out of town quickly and everybody home on same routes, different routes, whatever, because we've had a, heads up.
Superintendent Armstrong.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I contacted each of the municipalities in Windsor-Essex County to notify them of the early dismissal, because there's also an equal concern that the Catholic Arc Coterminous boards are dismissing at the same time. They have alerted their fire departments, the OBP and police have been alerted, and all of the school guards, crossing guards, their shifts have all been adjusted to ensure that students can cross the road safely where there are crossing guards at those spaces.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion for Education Committee? Seeing none, are there announcements for this committee? Superintendent Howitt has some, and I will also, while she's going to the mic, highlight today as World Autism Day, as well, I believe Ramadan ends soon with Eid beginning, I see, April 9th and 10th, as well as World Day for Safety and Health at Work, April 28th, and I think that's International Day of Pink is April the 12th. So, Sikh Heritage Month also is in April, just in case you did not know. Superintendent Howitt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And on behalf of my colleague in the great presentation that was made this evening, the official day for Earth Day is Monday, April 22nd. Many Canadians, including the students, do stewardship activities on this day, such as tree planting and garbage cleanup, and bring an awareness of these activities that have a positive impact on the environment. The Earth is what we all have in common. It's possible that Earth Day can be every day where we consider how our actions impact the natural world. The presentation this evening demonstrated our deep commitment and efforts to make Earth Day every day, and how we continue our efforts on decreasing single-use plastics such as plastic cutlery, styrofoam water bottles, and sandwich bags to reduce our ecological footprint. And an additional announcement, just a reminder, it's been posted on our website and through social media repeatedly, but we continue with our student census, working with advisory groups, and we're at a point with community consultation. Our Black student data session has been rescheduled to April 27th at Herman Secondary School, and our first meeting with data on students with disabilities and special students with special education needs is this Saturday at John Campbell School. So please go to our website. There's a QR code to register, and we welcome as many people as possible.
Thank you very much. Anybody remember an announcement they've forgotten? Okay. Move on, and I will, having completed our agenda, adjourn this meeting. We will convene into operations and finance. It will just take us a few minutes to change up our desks. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I'll warn you now that we're not talking about anything nearly exciting as beaver puke and owl saliva. We're talking about finances. Nevertheless, we'll try to make it as exciting as we can. For attendance, we have the same as we had for education. Both Trustee Armstrong and Trustee Cook are absent, and Student Trustee Mohammed is not with us this evening. Approval of the agenda.
I'm on the phone.
Oh, I'm sorry, and Trustee Hatfield is on the phone. I apologize. Approval of the agenda. Sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. If we could just be aware that we have Mr. Spagnolo, Mario Spagnolo, as a delegation, and Gina Marcone as a speaker on our agenda. So as amended, Trustee Buckler and Trustee Burgess, all in support? Carried. Is there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Approval of the minutes for February 6, 2024. Do I have a mover? Trustee Nelson. Seconder, Trustee McKinley. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Seeing none, all in support? Opposed? That's carried. Is there any business arising? Trustee Burgess.
It's a question, and I've already asked it, but for everyone, if I could, through you, if I could, on page, I gotta make sure I got the right page. I think it's 2 and 3. Yeah. Help me with the acronym. BIBO? Bobby. There we go. It's about the broader public sector procurement directive, Building Ontario Businesses Initiative, Bobby. And it just came into effect, and there was a press release about that. It was effective April 1st, et cetera. And my question was, it's in effect now. Has that changed practices? Will it change practices? How will it change practices? How prepared are we? That kind of thing.
Thank you. Through the chair, as we indicated at the time when we introduced the idea and the legislation that was coming, the school board has substantially most of its vendors, and our contracts are through Ontario businesses to start with. So our expectation at that time, and it still is that the change to the board is not significant. Also, since that time, we have not had any significant RFPs or RFQs that have been issued. Certainly, though, as that continues and as we have to procure those services, we will have to comply with the legislation and obviously give preference to Ontario businesses for that work. It's still an evolving subject with the ministry as school boards ask more questions. I think at the time I'd indicated things like making purchases on P-cards and Amazon was something that, was taken back to the ministry for further clarification. We're still waiting for those types of things.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The other thing was when we put in capital project submissions, et cetera, will that affect this? And how will that affect this? Do we know? Can we predict?
Thank you, through the chair. This is applicable to any procurement that is done by the public board or by a broader public sector entity. Certainly, most of the contractors that we work with, our general contractors, are Ontario businesses, so we wouldn't anticipate, again, anything that would be significant from that perspective.
Thank you. And you learn something new every day. I always thought a Bobby was a British police officer. Is there any other British, is there any more British police officers around? Is there any more business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. I would like to introduce Rachel Bondi, our Energy and Environmental Officer. She'll be presenting on utilities management and forecasting. Now, come on, that competes with beaver vomit.
So funny enough, before I came in today, usually I'm with our stewardship teachers, and we had a little joke in the hallway, and they pointed at me and laughed and said, "Have fun," because we're on opposite sides of the fence today. And I've tried to make this as fun as possible, but it is still utilities and forecasting. So first and foremost, thank you to everyone for having me back. The last time I was here, we discussed in depth a lot of the work we were doing around waste management. Today, budgets have been a continual topic of conversation with our board, obviously very important with the deficit we are currently in. So I felt, and facility services felt, and Superintendent Armstrong felt it was important to come back and provide a little bit more clarity around some of the work we do to manage our utilities in-house and also forecast into the future what our cost and what our budgets are really going to look like. We wanted to provide an update that was a little bit more than just, hey, here's the number we can expect to spend. So I'm going to dive into each utility, talk a little bit about the work we're doing in-house, and some of the factors that we're starting to consider as we migrate through our next few budgetary years. So the best way to really start this conversation, beginning with natural gas, is to really take a moment to understand what our bills look like. So that's exactly what we've done. On screen, I have a sample bill from one of our elementary sites in our system. And what I've highlighted in red and green are the components of the bill that we have an ability to affect. So the red are items that are fixed and we really can't do anything about as a school board. So the customer charge is a flat rate determined by our utility provider. It includes things like meter reading, maintenance, emergency response. And even if we use zero natural gas over the course of a month, this fee is fixed and will appear on every bill for every site that we own and operate. The delivery charge is the cost imposed to get natural gas from our provider to our buildings. And then the final piece on there is that federal carbon charge, which has been all over the news as of late as our carbon tax. The green are the components that we can control, and that's the physical transportation of the natural gas from the producer to our Enbridge sites, and the actual commodity price, which is our gas supply charge. So based on the average school, what we're seeing, we are only in control of 43% of our individual natural gas bills. From there, it's important to look at who's involved in this process. So when it comes to natural gas, we have two key stakeholders that we deal with. The first is Enbridge as our provincial authority. And then we also work independently with Shell Energy to procure directly at the source. So Enbridge is responsible for the end-of-line process. They're responsible for a steady stream of natural gas to our buildings just in time as we need it, and taking care of the billing process out the other side. However, before we get to that stage of the game, it's important to consider that since 1985, our school board has been working as part of a consortium with other public entities in the area to procure natural gas and have it delivered to us through Enbridge. So as part of this consortium, we purchase our natural gas directly from the source. From there, it's shipped through pipelines, either the TransCanada or the Great Lake Pipeline, to two holding facilities, Parkway and Dawn. From there, as this natural gas is needed, it's sent into the provincial distribution lines and delivered directly to our schools. Now, there's a lot more that goes into this, and what we have to do is really discuss pricing altogether, because although we purchase directly from the source, it doesn't mean that our pricing is fixed and that it won't change over time. So natural gas is a commodity, and you can buy any amount of natural gas at any time on the spot market, and the price is dictated simply by supply and demand. Now, there's larger conversations to be had about the New York Mercantile Stock Exchange and futures pricing and all that, but for apples to apples comparison, at any time you can go out and buy natural gas. Over time, natural gas has really changed in the province of Ontario and in Canada, because for a long time it was really dictated by weather patterns, and the colder the weather, the higher the commodity price. However, our chart on screen looks back to January 2021, and all of the orange lines and up and down in volatility that's listed there is directly related to the war in Ukraine, something that as a school board in the province of Ontario, we've never really had to deal with before. So if we examine this period specifically for a little bit of case study on previous budget years, Europe, case in point, was very reliant on Russian natural gas supply. When the war in Ukraine started, this supply was interrupted. Now Europe, like most areas of the globe, has a backup supply ready to go. But the war, combined with extreme temperatures in the summer of 2022, created this wild volatility in the natural gas market as they were reliant on more liquefied natural gas exports. So when this happened, it not only creates higher surge pricing in areas of Europe, but it also affects our North American market. As we go through, This is going to be a bit of a snapshot of different things we're considering within our pricing, but it's by no means a complete list. And first up on that budgetary consideration is the increasing export of liquefied natural gas. So liquefied natural gas is exactly what it sounds like. You take our normal natural gas supply, you super cool it so that it can be transported internationally on cargo ships. The problem here is that back in 2016, North America was sitting at about 1 billion cubic feet of export per day. And by next year, we're projected to be at about 20 billion cubic feet per day of export globally. So just like supply and demand, when our supply is reduced within our North American markets, our price is going to continue to increase. And we would be amiss if we also didn't discuss carbon pricing. So I bring it up not to discuss the merits or the pros and cons, but just to reflect on what this is going to do for our billing going forward as a school board. So on the screen, I have the projected carbon pricing with where we're at headed 24 into 25 as it just increased yesterday. But really what I wanted to highlight is some of the work that we're doing as a school board to reduce our use. So focused in on a calendar year, I have our historical use from 2021, 2022, and the green line of 2023. And facility services as a whole has really been focusing on, how do we reduce our use? How do we become more energy efficient? Because we know that this pricing is going to continue to go up and up and up. So we've been implementing a series of changes, focusing in on things like boiler replacements or retrofits wherever possible, increasing the R value or insulation in the envelope of our buildings. We've implemented a more rigorous preventative maintenance schedule. And then very critical is really heavily focusing in on our building automation systems. And the idea is that if we can maintain very specific set points throughout our building, that will help equalize and normalize our temperature, reducing our overall use. We won't see those crazy spikes when we come in the morning and all of our systems kick on. So despite this effort, you can see a pretty drastic increase from that blue line in 2021 to the green line in 2023, and our costs are still continuing to go up year over year over year. And then one final area specific to natural gas that I wanted to focus in on is forest fires and air quality. So it's no secret that we have a wealth of natural resources in our country. Alberta is a hotspot for gas and oil. However, with climate change and some of the global warming that we're seeing, it's also a hotspot for forest fires. And on the screen, this is a map of the 55 forest fires that are still burning in the province of Alberta, which is problematic because these are legacy fires that are still burning from previous forest fire seasons. So if we eliminate the human component and we eliminate the natural component and strictly look at this from a resource perspective, if these forest fires migrate towards the production facilities, production's going to shut down. And if air patterns change and it blows too much smoke towards these production facilities, production shuts down. And again, this impacts our commodity cost as there's less supply available for the market. Okay. Now, just like natural gas, as we shift over to electricity, again, the best way to take a look at this is to really understand our billing out the other side. So similarly, red arrows are items that we have absolutely no control over. The green is what we can actually control in this case. So if we start with the red, the global adjustment is the amount paid to generators in order to meet revenue requirements. Delivery is our cost of getting the electricity from a generating station to our buildings. So this includes maintenance, transmission, connection services. And again, just like with natural gas, if we use nothing, this fee still applies. And then regulatory charges are another piece that it's a fixed cost, and that's fees that are applied by the independent electricity system operator. So if we focus solely in on that green component, we only have control of about 20% of our electricity bills for our individual buildings. Okay. Like natural gas, we have various stakeholders that we deal with. So Jupiter is an independent energy advisor that we work with as we navigate through our electricity market. And then within the region, we have 4 different providers, ELK, Enwin, Essex Power, and Hydro One that we deal with. Commodity pricing is again something we have to look at. So the electricity market deregulated in 2002, and when this happened, most school boards in the province joined a consortium to competitively procure electricity and lock in contracts over multiple years. The school board consortium continues to rely on Jupiter, which is our independent advisor, to monitor and advise us on how best we proceed through this market. So each month they provide updates on pricing and policy changes in the province. They look at cost and demand trends. They forecast weather. And they really try to identify to us over the length of a year where this pricing is going to land so we can budget appropriately. Mainly, they look at the hourly Ontario energy price, which is the market clearing price, and the global adjustment, which again is the amount paid to generators in order to meet price guarantees that have been preset. So in 2005, the government of Ontario introduced that global adjustment piece, and it acts inversely to pricing. So if pricing drops, the global adjustment increases to ensure profits, and if the price increases, the global adjustment drops to ensure that there's kind of that flat line we maintain. So biggest considerations, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, but this is something that is going to affect our budget going forward. And the first one up, and probably most impactful, is going to be our nuclear refurbishment schedule. So this is, this chart's a little bit old. It came out in 2002, and there's some debate over what's going to happen to the Pickering generation plants. It's looking like they will be refurbished rather than retired. But even if we factor that piece in, over the next several years, we have multiple nuclear generation stations that are going down for refurbishment. And what this means is we're going to be a bit left with a big gap within our electrical grid, as nuclear generation makes up over 50% of the electrical power that we use in the province of Ontario. It's expected that natural gas is going to have to help fill this void, and natural gas runs far more expensive than our electricity as a commodity. From there, weather is also a big consideration. So although we are in an unseasonably warm year, with it being a Nino year, year after year, summer after summer, as of late, we're seeing these warmer and warmer temperatures. Right now, Environment Canada has released its most recent outlook headed into the spring and summer. And if you look at where we are regionally on the map, they're predicting that pretty much 100% probability that we're going to have higher temperature or higher seasonal temperatures than the normal. Okay, and just like natural gas, I like to look at our year over year. I switch these into calendar just so it's a little bit easier to follow through the seasons. This one's a little bit busier, and I ask you to ignore the orange and the green lines because those are COVID years. And the reason we have to ignore them is electricity doesn't work the same way natural gas does. So when we were in the COVID era, we didn't necessarily know when schools were going to reopen. So we had to maintain certain set points within our buildings. So there was still that draw on our HVAC systems and our heating. With electricity, the moment we have vacancy, the lights are off. We unplug all of our appliances. We actually removed many appliances from buildings. So the natural draw on those buildings is automatically going to drop. So 2020 and 2021 just aren't an accurate year. But the reason I highlight this is, again, to just show some of the work that we're doing behind the scenes. So if we focus in on that blue line, which is 2018, and then the fuchsia line, which is 2023, some of the projects that have brought us from that higher consumption down would be full lighting LED upgrades throughout our building. So any building that wasn't slated to be sold or closed, we went through and we completely retrofitted the entire building to LED lighting fixtures. Where possible in our buildings, we've gone through and installed occupancy sensors. So after a period of no activity, the lights will automatically be shut off. We're changing the way some of the outlets function in our buildings. So for example, computer labs, at the end of the day, once scheduled hours are done, 50% of the outlets cut power so that there's no phantom power being pulled throughout the evening hours. We now source only Energy Star appliances in our buildings. And really that's what's driven that drop between those years. Okay. And then as we get into water, Big thing again, looking at our bill. Stakeholders. Basically, as we go through these, there's more and more stakeholders involved in the process. The most recent one is the transition from ELK Energy doing our billing for water in the town of Essex to the town of Essex taking it back in-house. And I think we're going to see more and more of this going forward as municipalities start to streamline some of their business as well. But when we start to focus in on our bill, again, green is what we can control, red is what we can't. And the big thing is consumption is really our biggest bang for our buck here. The issue we kind of run into is for every cubic meter of water we bring into our building, it costs 75 cents. For that same cubic meter to then exit our building, it costs $3. So it's substantially more expensive when we use it in the building. So the idea here is reduction over time. Looking at the fixed components of our bills, with water, we have the option to control 40% of our total out-of-pocket expenses. Now, this chart's set up a little bit different because it's just total volume usage for the entire year. But this is probably the next area we'll be looking into as far as climate action as we go forward. So this year we had a great push for waste minimization. We saw a 14% overall improvement in our waste diversion tactics. The next piece is probably going to focus in on energy conservation, and that's because water, we still have a pretty big option there with 40% of the bill we can control. And this is one that the occupants of our building, so our staff, our students, our visitors, our community stakeholders can impact every day by something as simple as looking out for running toilets, leaky taps, things of that nature. Okay. And all of that leads us to our forecast into next year. And I wanted to highlight really quickly now for fiscal year 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, we usually landed with a surplus of about $1 million with our utilities. And we could say we were lazy with our budgets, but we weren't. I've seen the data that went into it, and there was some really good accounting and looking at structurally what is this going to mean in the age of our buildings and the work we're doing. It wasn't sloppy math at all. The reality is all of a sudden we're getting hit with these global events, and we're getting hit with the unforeseen and 100-year events that we never could have predicted happening. So looking ahead into the year 2024, 2025, our natural gas budget is going to be increasing by 15% to just over $2.6 million. Our electricity budget will be increasing 7% to just over $3.8 million, and water is going to have to increase by 10% to just shy of $1 million. This is all before any unforeseeable extreme events. This is before any natural disasters. This is before any unforeseen global issues arise. So although mine's a little bit more doom and gloom than my last presentation, I wanted to come here and present a kind of whole picture of these are the types of things we're having to consider as a mid-sized school board in Southern Ontario. It's a lot of things that we really haven't had to take into consideration before. So I hope that answers some of the questions. And if anybody has any questions for myself or Superintendent Armstrong, let us know.
Are there any questions?
I have a question, and it's not really rhetorical, but we've had projects in the past, and I know that Juliana Hinchliffe did mention something about we were looking possibly at using something like geothermal for a capital project, those projects that are capital heavy up front, and you really need to have some length to them and stuff. But when you look at numbers like this and the unpredictability and the reality of increased usage, increased costs, I should say, are we really serious about looking at some of the other things that we could generate or really save on from a capital perspective?
Yes. So what I would say is though I work in the same building as capital projects, I'm privy to some of the aspects of the design phase and what goes into those initial quotes, but it's not my immediate realm, and I'm working at gaining comfort within some of the project specs that they initially put out. What I can say is candidly, every new school and addition that we budget for, especially as our new projects, there's elements of that quoted into every individual project. The ultimate goal long-term is to completely get off natural gas as we move forward with our new builds. And as we enter the design phase of every new project, that's really the aim. However, and Superintendent Armstrong can speak to this a little bit more, we are reliant on ministry funding. So we go through, and when it comes to the design phase, we put absolutely everything we want onto that page, and then we present it. And we're left with what number comes back at us. So absolutely any way possible, we fit those big shiny ideas, but there's lots of small innovative ways that we can also do some pretty great work. And one of the newest ones is the outlets in the building. So you'll start to notice in our newer buildings, they're actually color coded differently. And as they're color coded differently, that means if you're using that outlet, you know automatically the power is going to cut out as soon as school hours are complete. So sometimes it's not the big shiny things that make the news. Sometimes it's the small changes that have really measurable impact within our system.
I think Superintendent Armstrong has something to add to that.
Thank you. Through the chair, the only other capital funding that we actually receive besides capital priority funding is school renewal and school condition improvement, which totals approximately $24 million for this current school year. And we always, like I've said, we've always focused on high and urgent needs. We focus on life safety systems, but the other area that we always focus on too are items such as these, whether it's roofs, energy efficient windows, ventilation systems, things of that nature, because not only does it help the whole school and it helps the comfort of the students and the staff working in the building, but it has a financial benefit to the board down the road. As you see the costs of our utilities, there's a purpose to doing that type of work, and we're intentional when we select those projects.
Trustee Chin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chair. And I see that the bill, the gas bill, and it has 4,400 something for the overall cost, and among it, the federal carbon charge is over 1,600. So that means over 1/3 of the cost is charged by federal carbon charge. Is that correct?
So what you would see on our bill is correct based on current. So that one would have been based on, I believe that bill was February into March.
Mhm.
So it would have been based off of the $60 price point rather than the 85 that it increased to as of April 1st. So it might be, it actually might be more.
Yeah, even
and
more,
even
right?
more now, yes.
Yeah, that's a great, a lot of cost increase because of the carbon tax. So, and we don't have any subsidy for the carbon tax, right? And what can our board do to advocate regarding this cost? Because it's really a huge cost. Are we going to do something to kind of advocate from federal government to give us any funding or subsidies or cut the carbon tax?
So,
Thank you.
Trustee Chin, we do have a climate action plan. I don't know that Mrs. Bondi can get into a political response to the carbon tax portion. She can certainly answer whether or not we get any rebate or any support related to that, but not into what we can advocate.
Okay, so have we got any rebate?
So I can definitely speak to that piece from two angles. So the first was going to be absolutely our board's climate action plan. And a big part of that is the work that facility services does through just our large scale projects like boiler retrofits or replacements to just reduce our overall usage. One of the things I'll be coming back to the board with in June is what our actual carbon footprint is calculated out to be. And then from there, we're going to start to be able to put more meaningful change in action and look at what our reduction will look like and what the number or dollar value associated with that will be year over year over year as we work to reduce. From a incentive perspective, what I can tell you is over the past few years, we have absolutely monopolized on any incentive that was available to us. The problem is that year over year, the incentives that are offered by the different government agencies change. So just because there's an incentive offered one year does not mean that it will be offered the next. So based on our capital priorities, we try to funnel as much of our projects towards the incentives that are available. And one of the big ones a few years ago really was boiler retrofits. So that's why we saw such a drastic reduction in our use of natural gas. One of the challenges we face going forward in this area, just to be candid with everybody who's online or in person today, is just competing priorities in the region. So when you look at some of the great work that's going on with the Nexstar battery plant or the new hospital that's going to be going in or our new international bridge, there's not an infinite amount of labor and specific trades that are available. So one of the problems we run into as a school board of even if we get some of these incentives awarded to us, the cost of these projects have absolutely skyrocketed. The cost of the trades have skyrocketed. There are trades that live in the region, and to keep them on set projects, they're being paid higher wages or per diems, even though they are local employees. And as a public entity based on public sector funding and incentives where they're available, we can't necessarily keep up all the time, but absolutely anywhere where there is an incentive available, we've been taking advantage of it. So two of the biggest ones in most recent years have been our boiler retrofits or upgrades. And then the second one was our LED lighting incentive. And that one was millions of dollars that we qualified for.
Okay, thank you.
For information on this, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could, because it's a point for information. We do advocate on federal issues, and we do advocate through as a board and at the OPSPA Board of Directors table, bringing it to the attention of the Canadian School Board Association. We do interact directly with the councils and ministers of education, for example, but through the Canadian School Board. And I bring that up because we have in the past, the only thing I'm thinking of is we have in the past advocated for rebates for HST in the diesel fuel that we use for buses, because we're not for profit. It's something we have to do, and you know, other organizations sometimes get a rebate, we don't. And, you know, we think, why are we paying the HST on the gasoline portion of the fuel for the school buses that we must run? So there is an opportunity through the OPSPA Board of Directors and to bring it forward to Canadian School Board Association, just to even ask, you know, it's compartmentalizing the carbon tax debate. I'm not saying, you know, eliminate or individuals getting rebates, the pros, the cons, or whatever. It's just if you're not for profit, you're in a public sector, you have to do it. We're funded by taxpayers. So do taxpayers have to constantly pay taxpayers? So there is an opportunity.
So for clarity from my perspective, I didn't want to put Mrs. Bondi in the position where she had to politically advocate. I 100% agree with you. If the board feels that there's opportunity to advocate for savings, 100%. I just didn't want to put Mrs. Bondi in that position. Trustee McKinley.
Yeah, just this will be an easier question. Just wondering, I know we currently have a sweater day. I'm wondering maybe we might be having a few extra sweater days for next winter. Is that thought of already?
Superintendent.
Oh boy. Okay, so we haven't really publicly announced this, but as one of our initiatives to address, seriously to address the current year's budget deficit and moving forward, facility services is going to be given the instructions on depending on the time of the year, to change the building temperatures down 2 degrees. So people will need to start wearing sweaters, and that's across the system. And in the warmer weather, to turn the temperature up 2 degrees. So to dress appropriately is a way to try and use a little bit less energy. So we will be doing that.
On that, or okay, go ahead.
My only concern, sweaters you can put on, you can take off. I'm concerned about the buildings that aren't air conditioned on the second floor, et cetera. We have a heat policy, et cetera, but maybe we could do it per facility rather than looking at, or wings or something, because 2 degrees when it's stinking hot already is, it's just counterproductive to good learning.
Hard to turn down 2 degrees if there's no air conditioning, though. You know what I mean? Yeah. Trustee Nelson.
Thank you, through you, Chair. If our goal is to eliminate the natural gas use, then I wonder, do we have a timeline put in place, and/or what supports do we need to achieve that?
So right now, what I can firmly say is that is 100% the goal. One of the challenges we face is right now, regionally, it's something new. So as far as partners that understand and work with a variety of new technologies like geothermal, like solar, we're a little bit limited in the region, and it's coming, but it takes a little while for those individual companies to kind of get their knowledge base up to where it needs to be. I think what one of the biggest things going forward is really going to be, once we know our greenhouse gas footprint, and we've made our commitment, and we start putting these things out publicly, there's something to be said about the traction that's gained from, okay, here's what our commitment is. I could say, we're going to do it by 2030, but I don't want to impose a random date when it's not, a specific measurable target as of yet. So it's something we're looking at. It's something we're working on. But until I have hard data in front of me, I don't want to commit to a set date quite yet.
Trustee Sipkar.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I almost said Madam Chair. My question was actually going to be around what mitigation measures do we have for our budget for next year, seeing 7.4 million in addition, and then also hearing though that we're going to be having our carbon footprint numbers coming forward. It kind of piqued my interest, and so I know, Superintendent, you just spoke to one example, but I assume your team is bringing forward more to counteract that 7.4 million. I'm just curious if you could speak to any of those offhand, if you have them.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. Certainly, we're concerned not just with what we anticipate 24-25 could be. We're clearly focusing on the $10 million, $8.9 million deficit we have for 23-24. So the challenge that is associated with that is a substantial portion of our budget is through salaries and benefits. So it's difficult at this point to try and mitigate that through those types of budget line items. So trying to address that through the remaining 20% is challenging. I've mentioned we're looking at literally adjusting the temperature across the system as a way to offset some of the utility costs. We are also will be implementing a purchasing freeze, and we will be freezing purchasing. We will be freezing purchasing cards. All purchasing needs to be supported, approved either through the director's office or through the superintendent's, and that's for everything, as a way to mitigate and slow down spending, making a critical evaluation of what we're buying. Do we really need it? Things of that nature. Even something as simple as we were talking today about office supplies. To be quite honest with you, every individual department is buying office supplies. Well, maybe if I need paper clips, and I'm oversimplifying this, but maybe I should just walk upstairs and see if the academic department has it. So we're literally getting that granular, and we're going to be implementing those measures effective in April in order to try and slow down as much as we can, so that the 8.9 isn't 8.9. We're hoping it'll be something smaller than that. And then it changes culture, and it changes behavior, it changes habits that we hope we would bring forward into 24-25 and going forward.
No, well, I'll just say I appreciate the presentation, and I think, I can see that we're making a lot of steps moving forward with respect to the budget and making sure that we're really dialed in. I think when it comes to the utilities forecasting, I pictured seeing the greater context and what, that we're kind of at the the whims, I should say, of the global markets. So I appreciated that, and I appreciate hearing that we're doing things at the micro level as well. So thank you.
Trustee McKinley.
A quick question. Just wondering, would we be able to get this PowerPoint sent to us as trustees? Would that be okay?
That can be done.
Thank you.
I don't think we have any further questions. I did have a question, but Trustee Sipkar beat me to the punch, so that's all good. Mrs. Bondi, I would like to express our gratitude for your wonderful presentation. I think you should note that despite having no beaver puke, you received more questions from more trustees, and I think part of it is because utilities resonate with all of us, right? We all have to deal with utilities in different levels through our life and through managing our day-to-day lives, right? And I think it connects when we see things in it, like Trustee Cheen pointing out how harsh the carbon tax portion is on natural gas. And although I don't personally have an issue paying 3.3 cents more for gasoline at the pumps, because I hope I'm one of the 80% that get money back more than I spend out. Unfortunately, school boards aren't at that advantage to be receiving refunds. So it is a burden. And knowing the financial situation and the fact that our GSNs have been squeezed so much over the years, I think we're looking for every opportunity to find a penny. And we really appreciate what you've brought to us tonight. So thank you. All right, so we'll move on to delegations, and we have Mr. Mario Spagnolo here. Come on up, Mario, and you'll have 10 minutes when you're ready to begin. No, you're fine there. You're not public. You're fine here. You're not a member of the gallery. You are a member of a union in support of our board, right?
Thanks. That would have been a great 10 minutes for you. Thank you for providing me an opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Mario Spagnolo. I'm here in the capacity of local president of the Greater Essex Elementary Teachers Federation, representing approximately 1,500 elementary teachers in over 60 schools and work sites. My goal in the next 10 minutes is to provide you input from the front lines of our elementary schools, including teachers in homerooms, those providing specialized programs such as library, music, FSL, other roles including coaches, itinerant teachers, consultants, and coordinators. And last but certainly not least, our special education teachers in Gaines, RISE, LST, and other capacities. So I think I heard a $9.8 or $8.9 million deficit. I'm not a math person. I just said a $10 million deficit looms in front of us because it seems to change. One thing everyone in this room agrees upon is that cuts hurt kids. Let me give you a few more numbers for consideration. 57,000 children with autism sit on a waiting list to be serviced by the Ontario Autism Program in this province. According to a 2023 number, 1 in 36 children are now identified with autism. 17% of our elementary students in Ontario receive some form of special education supports in our publicly funded schools. In Canada, 1 in 5 children who need mental health services actually receive the services they need. According to People for Education, 42% of elementary schools experience EA shortages on a daily basis. In our board, it's not uncommon for support staff absences to be unfilled. Our front lines are short-staffed. This is not just a GECDSB problem, but we are not immune nonetheless. The numbers are clear. There's a crisis in our community, and our schools are a microcosm of our communities. Cuts hurt kids, and as trustees, you are charged with focusing on student achievement, well-being, equity, while representing your constituents who elect you. Cuts to any services hurt all students in our schools. When classrooms are evacuated due to a lack of support, when mental health goes unaddressed, students can't learn. When students are left without sufficient support staff, student learning suffers. When resources are stretched too thin, students can't reach their full potential. When the number of students with needs exceeds the available support, everyone is disadvantaged. We have students who can't start or can't stay all day at school because we don't have the supports available. The system is failing our students. There was a reference made to our board offering a Tesla model of special education. Compare it to a Tesla, a Ferrari, or a Cadillac, we should aim to offer even more. Our students with special needs already have enough obstacles in front of them. Their school should be a place where they can excel, feel safe, included, and a place where they want to come to school every day. According to the board's strategic plan, the vision is building tomorrow together. If we want to truly stand by this vision, any cuts to kids, any cuts to the front line will not live up to our mission. The board's first strategic priority is creating confident learners through personalized learning, supportive environments, and trusting relationships. Removing RISE classrooms, for example, will depersonalize student learning and may mean the difference between a child learning to read or not. Investment is the answer. Across Ontario, teachers and federations have pointed to high levels of stress, large class sizes, lack of safety, lack of support to address the complexities in our classroom. Any cuts to services to students further exacerbates this ongoing critical situation. If during these budget deliberations, trustees are asked to make cuts to special education, to RISE, or any other service for our frontline educators and students, the answer must be no. Stand up and tell the ministry, cuts hurt kids. This past Thursday, I put out a survey to our members, and the question I asked was the following. In fewer than 50 words, if you could tell trustees something to help you and your students in the classroom, what would it be? During the long weekend, I received close to 400 responses, representing a 30% response rate during a holiday weekend. Our staff's committed. I'd like to give you a glimpse of the priorities. First, you can see the various school locations that responded to the survey. Second, I've developed a word cloud that illustrates the most common themes in the responses. The top 3 words: support, need, and students, followed by classroom, resources, funding, and help. For the next few slides, I will display some authentic comments to give trustees an understanding of what elementary teachers are dealing with and what they like to see. Teacher 1, the classroom of today looks very different than the classroom that you attended years ago. Student needs and behavior issues have changed greatly. More support staff is needed, and the cuts to education funding hurts all student learning. Teacher 2, I need you to know that as a junior teacher, I need help with the overwhelming social, mental, and educational needs of my 31 students. We need more LST, CYW, EA, and social work support. We are stretched to the max. Our student mental health, self-regulation, attendance, and social anxiety needs are skyrocketing. Getting students to school and keeping them here, assisting them to be and stay safe and feeling emotionally well has become our #1 concern. Teacher 3, stop by our classroom and see the diverse group of wonderful learners who benefit from being in a small group RISE classroom. Students learn in a safe and welcoming environment where they can be themselves with students with similar needs and challenges and caring and trusted adults. The RISE room is the single most effective measure in place to meet the learning needs of our most vulnerable learners, protecting both their emotional development and providing support and interventions not available in a different learning environment. Teacher 4, we need concrete resources, textbooks, appropriate training, and PD for resources and curriculum. We need clear discipline models to keep our schools safe. Trustees, I'm not naive to the fact that you have some challenging decisions ahead of you when it comes to the budget. I believe we in this room are those teachers and staff in our schools are the champions of public education. This includes federation, union leaders, senior admin, elected trustees. I would put forward that the majority of trustees here would increase funding to public education if they could, but the rules don't allow you. In fact, the rules are such that you are set up for failure. And by the board failing, staff fail. And when staff fail, our students are left with a system unequipped to serve all of them. Your tools in the toolbox are essentially dull and outdated. They have not kept up with the pace of the current reality. I'm sitting in observing these meetings for the past 2 decades, and I can count how many times you have sent letters to multiple ministers of education from various political parties about the flawed funding formula and a serious gap in special education funding. Sometimes you get a response, and other times you don't. But what actually has changed? Has it made a difference? To continually repeat and do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result seems to me as futile. Instead, I put forward the following concept. Stand up to the government and stand up for students. Stand up for the staff that you are here and responsible to protect, and a public education system that you need to promote. Through one simple gesture, you can do this. That is by refusing to pass a budget that includes any cuts. Keep your hands down and don't vote. Let the budget process fail as our government has failed our children. We don't have a spending problem in education. We have a funding problem. And this is not saying to senior admin that trustees don't back them or that trustees have given up. No, these folks who I work with on a daily basis are not in political roles. They are educators. They care about students just as much as teachers I represent. But they are bound by rules and procedures and policies to make a livelihood. I would never advise a member to risk that. But trustees, you have a different kind of power. That is a democratic power, a power that comes from the people you represent. Do not cut services to our most vulnerable students. Do not cut resources that our students need. Do not slash opportunities that enhance learning in our schools. Don't do the dirty work of the Premier and the Minister of Education. Let the budget process fail and let the folks from Queen's Park come down and have them answer the questions of concerned parents trying to help their kids get a proper education. Let them make decisions that you know very well are not good for kids. I ask you to be the hurdle, the turtle from the book written by Dr. Seuss. Your Majesty, please, I don't like to complain, but down here below, we're feeling great pain. I know up on top you are seeing great sights, but down here on the bottom, we too should have rights. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions of clarification? Trustee Burgess.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, if I could, to this, Mr. Spaniolo. There was part in the slide there, and I think it was one of the teacher comments, and it was about getting kids to school and keeping them there. And my question was, what was that in reference to? Just recently, to put it in context, I've read some things about how attendance at school has really dropped, and it's a big thread in New York Times and a lot of American discussion. I haven't seen any Canadian numbers. I don't know whether our attendance is the same, but I thought that was that piqued my interest because it said getting kids to school and keeping them there. So could you help me understand that?
So what I can tell you is anecdotally, the stories that we hear from our members, and I actually deal with members that have children of their own, they're struggling to get their kids to go to school due to mental health concerns. Maybe that's the Minister of Education. Should have invited him. It's all right. It's all good. So I think that's what the member was referring to, is that although academic achievement and success is important, I think what's taking over right now is kids' mental health and well-being. And some of them are not feeling safe being at school. Some of them are not successful coming to school, with less and less support staff available to some of our students. And that's not anyone's fault in this room. It's just a reality of the situation. We can't help those students stay in school and feel safe at school. So I think if I'm inferring, that's what the member was referring to.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of clarification? Seeing none, I would like to say thank you for your poignant and very appropriate presentation. I would like to reference my phone ringing saying that the theme song or that song was Won't Get Fooled Again. And as trustees, we've seen the lack of funding that you refer to, and that the stagnation in GSN and what its trickle-down effects are, so we won't be fooled again.
Thank you.
Thanks. Moving on to the speakers list. That's the best I could do with the phone call. So Speakers list, Gina Marcone. I don't know, how do I turn this microphone on? Oh, it's on, the light's on. So let me start by saying I apologize for how long you've had to wait this evening, but certainly appreciate that you've waited this long, and you have 5 minutes, and we're anxiously waiting to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I don't mind at all waiting. We're all doing incredible work here. Good evening, trustees. I am Gina Marcon, executive member of the Windsor Council of Home and School. It has come to our attention that there is the possibility that the RISE program may be eliminated. We have major concerns about this. RISE provides a valuable, intensive program that we feel is crucial to the success of many students in the board. We feel that the success of RISE identified students is tied to the low pupil-teacher ratio by intensely trained teachers who have invested their time in the science of reading, the Youth Fly Foundations, Key Math, Jump Math programs. RISE students are closely monitored by their teacher, ensuring that the IEP expectations as a working document can allow for growth and can be changed, updated, and upgraded to reflect the student's growth and development. The RISE program is geared to moving with the student as soon as it is felt that they have reached a level that makes them comfortable, confident, and geared to their differentiation. RISE teachers can attest to some students achieving success in 2 years and getting to go back into the classroom, their homeroom. Some students may need longer. Some students will stay in RISE until graduation. RISE teachers can also attest to the increase of behavior issues in the homeroom, which diminish in the RISE room. Students express that they are more invested in their learning in the RISE classroom, and they know, see, acknowledge, and realize that their success is incumbent on remaining there until those gaps are closed. Many students report being overwhelmed in the homeroom. However, in RISE, they will talk more, interact more, trust themselves more, feel more confident, increase their engagement, and have less feelings of isolation, resulting in better attendance. The RISE program can deal with behaviors in constructive ways, harnessing the students before actions escalate. There are opportunities to practice social skills, social learning, and social interactions. There is no doubt that the RISE student can receive great education from our exemplary homeroom educators. But the reality in these post-COVID times is that the program, instruction, time, and attention required makes it more difficult for the student to achieve success in reading, writing, and math instruction. The Ontario Human Rights Commission states, reading is a basic, essential right, not a privilege. In 2019, the Right to Read document states as one of its key findings from the 72-page document, quantitative and qualitative data gathered in the inquiry shows an urgent need to improve reading and other student achievement outcomes in Ontario. Too many Ontario students are not learning to read well. Windsor Council of Home and School Associations advocates the best for all students, and we feel this program is fundamental to that mission statement. RISE is a worthwhile investment in our students. The parents in Windsor-Essex support the RISE program. After speaking to educators, those in homerooms, those in RISE, those in Gaines, they have expressed their sadness at the thought of the elimination of RISE, that the students will miss the individualized supports offered in the RISE program. The board's own 2023-2024 strategic plan included the following: training in the use of diagnostic tools for all teachers, provided PD for RISE, new to RISE, LST, and new to LST teachers, purchased the UFly manual for RISE classrooms, purchased phonics workbooks to supplement decodable books in RISE. There has been an investment in RISE, and we cannot lose it. Well, let me share a solution, and I don't think I can get it in 35 seconds. The current spec ed model is not working, and I recognize that this is not a popular opinion. We are seeing the rampant and ongoing trend of boards carrying huge deficits in spec ed, lamenting there isn't enough funding, forcing cuts to our most vulnerable. As Mario said, we don't have a spending problem, we have a funding problem. Perhaps school boards are shouldering the cost of the current spec ed model. This model needs to be re-examined and redesigned so that boards develop meaningful, sustainable partnerships with outside agencies. There was a little bit more, but I thank you so much for your
How
time.
much time do you have left on there?
I don't know. A couple seconds.
Less than 30 seconds?
I'll go down to the bottom paragraph. Denying spec ed students the developmental need for individualized attention and time only adds more pressure to the regular classroom. And students who most need this individualized attention are being shortchanged in their learning and progress. The answer is not to cut. It is to partner and to share the educational and fiscal responsibility. In this case, inclusion is abandonment without proper support. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for clarification? No questions for clarification. I wish to thank you, and the extra 30 seconds was for being so patient tonight. So thank you for your presentation. It's very much appreciated. We're moving on to new business. There was none. We have two reports to receive. K1, which is the interim financial expense report as at February 29th, 2024, and K2, tender and request for proposals awarded for quarter ended February 29, 2024, in excess of $250,000 before taxes. Yep. So before we get to any questions, we're going to have Superintendent Armstrong speak to K1.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to acknowledge and thank Mr. Mayhew, who is working late tonight and who does a ton of work in the finance department and the whole team. So I want to thank him very much for everything he's been doing. I wanted to, in your package is the interim financial expenditures report for the quarter ending February 29th, 2024. As noted in the report, the board is on track to utilize 2% of its operating allocation, resulting in an in-year deficit of $8.9 million. And just as a reminder to everyone, the deficit is primarily due to a few factors, one being inflation and overall price increases for goods and services, unfunded statutory benefits, higher bus operator costs for student transportation, which exceed the available funding, increased expenses related to temporary accommodations such as portables, and higher expenses for special education exceeding the available funding, as we've already heard this evening. Sick leave and supply costs continue to trend toward the budgeted expenditure of $13 million. Of this expense, $7 million of it is unfunded. The Ministry of Education approved the board's in-year deficit elimination plan on March the 26th, 2024. The ministry characterized the board's deficit as a structural deficit, requiring the board to address its costs. The board has 2 years to eliminate the deficit, being 25-26. And the board will no longer have the ability to utilize up to 1% of its operating allocation in future years because we are required to address the structural deficit and work within the available funding. If that need ever comes that we need to do that, we require minister's approval just for the 1%. As a condition of the in-year deficit elimination plan, the board is now required to complete extensive, and I mean extensive, quarterly reporting which coincides with the province's fiscal year, not the school board's fiscal year. The first reporting for the period ending March 31st, 2024 is due on April the 20th. The ministry also advised that if the board identifies that its projected deficit is going to exceed the $8.9 million that was approved under the in-year deficit elimination plan, we are required to seek a new approval from the Ministry of Education for that revised deficit figure. And I have to also indicate too, it's not just the reporting, we have quarterly meetings now as well with the ministry. As has been previously communicated to trustees, very difficult budget decisions are going to be required as part of 24-25. And I feel, because I hear, I get it, I understand, but we have to be honest that 80% of our budget expenditures come from salaries and benefits. And we cannot solve an $8.9 million problem through non-salary expenditures representing the 20%. So we're going to have to contemplate that and make difficult decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain questions related to K1. Trustee Buckler.
My ears were listening for, because my heart's always belonged to spec ed, it's always going to be there. I'm sorry, it's just where it is. But, so I'm listening to you to try to figure out where in spec ed we went over. I know we have always, we've always been over in spec ed. Have we climbed even further? Is it staffing that's costing us more in spec ed now? Or where is it that the costs are rising in spec ed now?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't want to give the impression that a decision's already been made to make reductions through that area. We have a lot, hundreds of unfunded positions in special education by choice as a board. And that is one of the single biggest contributors to that deficit, where those expenses exceed the funding that's provided by the ministry.
Any other questions related to K1?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Trustee Hatfield.
Okay, thank you. So I heard Superintendent Armstrong say that we now have to do some new extensive reporting and quarterly meetings with the ministry about our financial situation.
That's accurate.
Okay, so then my question is this something for all boards, or is this some special monitoring that's happening with our board and our financial situation?
No, that is specific to our board based on our financial situation and the delay in getting our approval to reach that level of deficit.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Sipkar.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. You noted that we would need to get an additional approval if we are not on track to meet the 8.9 deficit. And then on page, I think it's 2 of the report, it said excluding the impact of the unfunded portion of Bill 124 remedy payments. I almost want to ask, how much anxiety do you have about that? But the question that I have is, how will we, do we have any indication that the ministry is going to pay for those unfunded portions? If not, how will that kind of impact us moving forward?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll start the answer, and then if I've messed it up, I know Mr. Mayhew's going to correct me. The board has so how the way the Bill 124 remedy is going to work is the ministry is going to go back and adjust the salary benchmarks in the GSN. And so we have received already from the ministry the adjusted salary benchmarks and the associated funding, like the calculation of what that will be for the years 2019-20, 2021, 21-22. So we know that piece already, and that funding will flow to the school board in this month in April. For the years of 2022-23 and 23-24, the ministry is going to again adjust the GSN salary benchmarks, but they will not provide or do that until August, which then also means that the funding associated with that isn't going to flow until either end of August, it could be into the fall. So it's going to be challenging to alert the ministry of what, if we're going to have a financial issue with respect to that, when 2 years of that remedy aren't going to come until August. I think what we've seen so far for the first 3 years that we've received, that we've seen what the funding should be, we feel somewhat encouraged. But until we actually get that information in August, we won't be able to alert them at that point. But it still is a concern. It's a valid, when it comes down to positions that are funded, and we've just already mentioned we have literally hundreds of unfunded positions, there still could be a gap, but we won't be able to quantify it.
Any other questions? Okay, so let's move on to K2, tender and request for proposal awarded. Are there any questions on that? No. Oh, Trustee Cheen?
I have a simple question. On page 25, number of total quantity bid, what does it mean in the form? Yeah, page 25, there is video surveillance cameras, and there is a number of total quantity bid for the two companies. Yeah.
It's the number of devices, cameras in total. So the one that first bid, they included 1,685 cameras, and the second one was one less camera. That's the difference.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. Trustee Sipkar?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. My question was, I noted that the company that was selected had actually higher value, and I was curious as to why. I read that they, scored higher on the point system, but I'm curious what that actually translates to.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I can speak to it high level. There was a difference in the warranty that was offered for the products. One was a 10-year warranty versus a 5-year warranty. Also, the chosen proponent, their bid contained, like their devices contained all of the features that the board wanted on those security cameras, where with the other proponent, you needed to do add-ons, and then you would have had to have procured and purchase those add-ons. So overall, the RFP team, evaluation team, based on qualitative and quantitative, selected the first proponent.
Student Trustee Pine?
Yeah, just a question on the awarded bid. It shows that the awarded value was 10 cents more than the original. I was just wondering if that was a typo or...
Well. Good question. Yeah, we are pinching pennies, Student Trustee Pine. It's a typo, but good catch. We are pinching pennies, so 10 cents is 10 cents. Anything else on K2? All right, trustee question period. Are there any questions? Trustee question period. Trustee Cheen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is regarding the track. Is there any updates? And I remember last time we asked if there is any other ways for us to cooperate with city or some other ways. So is there any update on that?
Yeah, Trustee Cheen, there's a notice of motion that will be coming to the next board meeting related to questions related to the track. Trustee Sipkar brought that forward.
Oh, yes.
So there's no further update until we get to that motion, I suppose. At the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Trustee Burgess.
I don't even know how to word it. We have some somber news, between the energy presentation and the superintendent of business and Mr. Mayhew, sharing that information, and very powerful presentation from a delegation. So I'm going to ask a question about the worst case scenario. So if we don't address adequately the 8.9 and we can't extrapolate whatever information from, what is it, 164, whatever it is, 124, to understand what we would need to say, okay, we've done this much, and we can't do that until August, but we've come up with a figure that and I'm sure that you'll be able to, and bargain that one. And if they come back and say no, and then the next step is supervision, because I want to understand the whole thing. We've seen it with coterminous board, we've seen it with other boards, public, boards across the province. If somebody comes in and we are put under supervision, are they obligated to keep to our special education plan or any of the other things that exist as a status quo datum, like this is what we want, or is it they don't have to embrace our values or our commitment in particular areas? Like, can they actually go in and don't have to listen to any presentation or hold anything?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly I have confidence, hope that we will not exceed that 2%, that 8.9. We will continue to endeavor and work very hard to work within that value. And certainly if there's a risk to that, we will be communicating that. The ministry has a number of compliance measures that they can enforce. Clearly, we have one of them already being applied to the board, and that is quarterly meetings and quarterly reporting. We are also obligated to tell them if we have any insights into our 24-25 budget that we know now, that we are also obligated to share that with them ahead of approving anything related to the budget. The ministry could also issue directives. They could have auditors come in and audit the school board, but certainly supervision could be another alternative. That's the strongest compliance measure they would put into place. They will not be bound by anything that trustees have put in place. Their job is going to come in and do the governance of the board, and they will balance the budget, and they will direct the cuts that need to be made. The ministry has indicated they know that spec ed is one of our biggest areas, and they have indicated that we really do need to examine that for cost savings. They've been clear because we have had to articulate to them why we have the deficit, and certainly those reasons I shared earlier in the introduction of the report, all of those items were shared with the ministry. And certainly they looked at that too. They looked at all of our EFA submissions. They could see where the deficit is driving from. And so that, yes, they will make whatever decisions they feel is necessary, regardless of how we've done things before.
Trustee Chin, I think you already had a question period? No, you did have a question. You were asked about the tracks, right?
Yeah, but
You get one question and it was answered.
it was out of order already. You didn't answer.
No, I didn't. It's not out of. There's only one question per trustee question period.
Then that question is not answered, and you said I should not ask, so I took it back.
No, that's not what I. That's
No,
not what,
I have another
Trustee Chin,
important
please.
question, please. I have another question.
You know what?
Please.
I will defer to you in this case. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. We got a letter from community regarding the quote for the track for the Bell River district.
Trustee Chin, that question is going to be addressed in the next board meeting.
No, it's different.
Oh, you're talking about the tracks and
it's talking about tracks, but
Trustee Chin, again, you need to understand that
Could you let me finish?
You're asking a question about a track.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that all the questions about track cannot be asked. It's
on
not
the-
related
on the-
to.
Trustee Cheen, it's on the agenda for our next meeting. So we all got the same email regarding the tracks. Trustee Sipcar has a notice of motion that's going to land next week. The questions will be answered, in 2 weeks. The question will be answered in 2 weeks. So please, we need to move on. Thank you. Are there any announcements, Trustee Sipcar? Sorry, is there a notice of motion?
No, I'm going to give it as an announcement, but you missed notices of motion. I just wanted to bring that.
I do appreciate that. There are no notices of motion. We'll go with announcements. I call Trustee Burgess first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is an announcement about a notice of motion given at one of our committees. So Migration Community Hall Kingsville is a not-for-profit charitable organization that for 30 years has had ex officio members of this board and town members, town of Kingsville members, et cetera, community members. And they were established in the late 80s and changed their name from the Kingsville Gymnatorium fundraising, whatever, to Migration Community Hall Kingsville in 1995. And at the recent meeting, the most recent meeting of the Migration Community Hall Kingsville, a notice motion was given that the Migration Community Hall Kingsville Board of Directors discuss the procedure to dissolve the not-for-profit organization that is Migration Community Hall Kingsville when the current high school property is closed. And I wanted to bring that to your attention. So that's, and it was, notice was given by MCHK Director Carol Merritt.
Okay, thank you for that. Trustee Sipcar?
Thank you. It has already been announced tonight at our Education Committee, but we must also announce it here. It is Earth Day this coming month on April 22nd, so I thought it was worth announcing again.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements? Seeing none, we will adjourn this Operation and Finance Committee meeting and we'll convene into the final portion of our public board meeting. Go ahead.
Thank you very much to our Education and our Operations and Finance Committees, all of the presenters, all of our superintendents, and we're now going to move on to Section H. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? Any declaration of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Actions of the board meeting of private session, Trustee Buckler? None.
Point of order, there is two.
Yeah, F1 and F2. Could I have?
I'll move the two items that were related to personnel.
Thank you. Trustee Leclerc, thank you. Could I have a seconder? Trustee Sipcar, all in support? Thank you very much. That moves. Approval of the minutes of February 6, 2024. Could I have a first? Trustee Leclerc, a seconder? Trustee Kim McKinley, all in support? Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? Any business arising from the minutes, okay? We're going to move on to L1, Education Committee. Were there any recommendations, Trustee McKinley? No. Okay, any recommendations from Ops and Finance, Trustee Leclerc?
None.
Okay, any notices of motion? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.